Hello, I'm Julian Wilkins. I'm the Associate Chorus Director for the CBSO Chorus, and I'm joined by Clare Noakes and Julian Edwards, two members of the CBSO Chorus, to talk about the forthcoming concert on the 31st of May with the CBSO, Fauré's Requiem. Can I ask you both what your past experience has been of that particular piece? Clare, I think you had something interesting to say earlier on.
Yeah, well, the Fauré Requiem was my set work for GCSE,
Wow.
which was quite a while ago now. So I studied it in depth, and that was the first time I actually had the opportunity to sing it through. Our music teacher was brilliant, and she made sure that we had a full understanding of it, having sung it as well as studied it. So that was the first time I saw it. And then at university, I was suddenly thrown into conducting a university choir, and so I had to pick a work that I knew. So I picked the Fauré Requiem. So I've sung it, I've conducted it, not as well as it will be conducted in May, I'm sure. And now I'm looking forward to singing it again with a much bigger and, dare I say, better choir than I sung it with all those years ago.
What about you, Julian?
It's interesting that Clare mentions a bigger choir. This was one of the first works I sung when my voice changed when I was a teenager at school, and I sang it in a chamber choir of about 18 or 19 people. Mm-hmm. So it was quite an interesting experience. It was very interesting to sing a baritone line for the first time, and it's a really nice baritone part to sing, and it's not too taxing if you haven't sung baritone before.
Yeah, I think rather like you, my first memory of it was being a treble soloist in the Pierre Jesu and having to sing that in Bristol, I think it was, in Colston Hall, with a sort of university chorus, not so unlike yours, Clare. And favourite bits of the piece? What are your? I mean, I think the Pierre Jesu for me is something that stands out. Obviously, Fauré didn't write all of the movements at the same time, and we'll talk possibly more about how the piece has been constructed, but are there any standout movements for you?
I actually like the opening. It reminds me a bit of the opening of Mozart's Requiem. It's in the same key.
Same key. Yeah.
And it just has that kind of that ominousness, if that's a word, of some of the some of the text to come. Although I know that Fauré didn't write a Dies Irae, there's still a bit of a kind of an undertone of a portended doom, if you like. So yeah, I like that.
I was reading something earlier today that said actually he started the piece in C minor, so some of the original sketches were in C minor, and then over time and various revisions, it turned into D minor, and that Requiem Aeternam appears a little bit later on in the Agnus Dei as well. It's sort of reprised, isn't it?
I was going to say actually the little bit just before that comes back in Agnus Dei is one of my favourite bits, where you have the big chorus sounds and then a great big orchestra sound. That's fantastic. And the beginning of the Liberame. The kind of
also in D minor.
Well, there we go. That's clearly a good key.
And obviously, Fauré seems to shy away, if that's the correct term, from the Dies Irae music and indeed sense. Although we get a little bit of that again later on, don't we? But overall, would you say how would you categorise the Requiem itself? Is it
I don't think it's an angry Requiem, like let's say Verdi, for example, or a kind of a dramatic gesture. I think I read somewhere that he wrote it for the pleasure of it, which is something quite unusual to say about a Requiem, but he didn't write it for anybody specific that he knew that he wanted to commemorate, or I think he liked it because he wrote it because he liked it, because he enjoyed orchestrating, and he enjoyed he wanted to write some good music for the sake of writing good music.
I think it's more hopeful than some of them. It feels I don't know, more life affirming than some of them.
Well, and that sort of transformative. It starts in D minor, and there's various other keys in all the other movements, but the very final movement, the Imparadisum, which I have to say is one of my favourites. It suddenly goes into D major, and you have this sort of opening up of heaven, moving from the minor to the major, and you have that. Well, you as a soprano will know about this.
Yes.
That rather sort of long not torturous, but beautiful to sing
Yes.
a line, and everybody else is sort of accompanying in that way as well. If you had to describe the Requiem to somebody who's never heard it before, and you were possibly encouraging them to come along to the concert, what would you say?
I think it's very easy to listen to. Yeah. It's not particularly. It's not a long listen either. So it's a kind of, if you're new to that form of music, it's a relatively manageable time to sit and listen to it without a change in the program. For the time that it was written, it's really quite approachable in terms of its tonality. Yeah,
it's nothing too hard going.
No,
is it? And all the movements, they have their own character. So there's lots of short bits. I mean, it does flow, but there's lots of different kind of textures and sounds, and I think it's quite interesting.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the time in kind of smaller settings, the bits are done on their own as items in a concert, aren't they? So it's a piece that is kind of, can we say, the sum of its parts?
Definitely. And I guess in the rest of the programme, we're juxtaposing the Fauré with pieces by Lily Boulanger, who of course will have been influenced by Fauré, but again she takes harmony in a slightly different direction, and I think it would be fair to say that the two psalms that we're singing, Psalm 24 and Psalm 130, are a little more challenging.
Yes, I think so, but not in a really frightening way.
No. I think very, very, very beautiful music, and the artistry of Fauré's orchestration. You hear obviously that art being passed on to Lily Boulanger as well. Obviously, a programme, the Fauré is in Latin and the Boulanger in French. How is it singing in those two different languages?
I find Latin much easier than French because it's very syllabic, and there are no silent letters, and there are no kind of weird things that you have to do with your nose or the back of your throat or anything or rolling R's or anything. Well, yeah, I suppose you do roll your R's in Latin, but Latin's for me is kind of second only to German to sing in, and it's easy. Whereas French, I think we're probably going to benefit from quite a lot of vocal coaching.
Well, yes, we have some wonderful
language coaching.
Thank goodness. French is nice. We kind of grow up. Well, certainly I grew up kind of singing church music, and it's all in Latin. You kind of sing Latin before you even really know that you're singing Latin. French. I mean, I did French GCSE, but you wouldn't tell from the way I sing French. I don't know. It's,
well, I didn't sing a piece in French until I joined the chorus, so that's kind of 40 years.
So we're getting a real in-depth version of this with all the Debussy that we've just been doing, and now this coming up as well. Let's talk a little bit more about a concert day from the CBSO choruses point of view. What's it feel like singing with the orchestra in Symphony Hall?
Every time I step out on Symphony Hall's stage, I have to pinch myself that I'm actually there, because I'm a rank amateur like all the chorus, and to kind of stand behind one of the world's great orchestras in one of the world's great concert halls is the most amazing experience. I've never had anything like it.
No, it's quite fun. One of my favourite kind of parts of the whole process is putting it together with the orchestra for the first time. We've heard the amazing pianistic abilities of our rehearsal pianist, but it's not the same as having a full orchestra and standing with all the chorus in the hall with a full orchestra, and you hear these textures, these harmonies for the first time, particularly on the more unusual works that you might not have heard before, or you've only listened to on via YouTube or wherever to learn the parts. Suddenly being right in the middle of that, particularly standing on the front row of the sopranos, you get this huge wash of sound. It's brilliant. And then you have to really concentrate, because you're suddenly miles away from the conductor, and you've got this enormous orchestra between you and everyone else.
It's a very different experience, isn't it? Because I guess in the chorus-only rehearsals, the piano is pointing towards you. It's a percussive instrument, so there's always something at the front of the note that you can hang on to, and that as soon as you're working with strings, wind and brass, who don't always play percussively.
No.
There's that extra element of
Yeah.
how it all fits together.
It certainly makes you listen. It enhances your listening skills and your watching skills as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yes, when you're waiting for your note cue from the second glockenspiel part, it's like, oh no. So suddenly you realise that actually the tenors are being far more useful.
Or what you thought was a bass note was actually just a timpani roll.
Yeah, yes, yeah.
And you can't actually get your note from that timpani roll.
Yeah, that's
quite challenging.
But it's good fun.
And how does a concert day work for you? Do you have any things that you're doing before you come for the rehearsals on the concert day, or indeed afterwards?
It depends what day of the week it is.
Uh-huh.
I mean, usually I'll have come, if it's during the week, I'll have come from work. I'll have cycled over from Aston and hopefully left myself enough time to have at least a cup of tea before a rehearsal or a concert. At the weekends, it's not quite so pressured because you can leave more time to get there. But
one thing I always try and do is to be silent for a little while before we go on stage. There's we all change in the same room, we all get together and we warm up in the same room, and there's a lot of hubbub and a lot of talking and a lot of kind of people catching up with each other, but I try and mentally shut myself off for that, only for 5 or 10 minutes. I don't get concert nerves, but it's a form of kind of brain training, I suppose.
It just allows you to focus on
Yes.
what you're
I don't even necessarily think about any particular piece that we're going to be performing. It's just a kind of to clear out all the rubbish that's accumulated in my brain over the week, I guess.
Yeah, I must admit, I suppose I don't really have any pre-concert things. I mean, a lot of us go for curry after a concert, and actually going home in the car, I have to turn the radio off. I nearly always have the radio on in the car, but I've got so much going on, so much music going on in my head at the end of the concert, I can't have anything else. I'd just like to listen to that, as it were.
I used to. I don't do it anymore because there isn't a convenient branch mostly near where we perform. But I used to always have a cheeky McDonald's on the way home after a concert. And I would always tell myself that was just to replace all the energy that I'd expended on the. So I was replenishing calories rather than adding them.
Very good. Well, thank you very much indeed, Claire and Julian, for talking about this next concert, and we'll look forward to seeing everybody on the 31st of May for some Fauré Requiem and some wonderful Lily Boulanger pieces with the CBSO Chorus, CBSO Children's Chorus, the CBSO, and of course our music director, Mirga.